Okay, we're doing another NoScript video. I usually don't do these unless I just don't feel like writing a giant script because I like to be thorough when I make these videos. This time I'm not being thorough at all. I'm more or less just going to be voicing my general thoughts on a few movies because, 2024 has gotten off to kind of an interesting start when it comes to cinema. Usually the first 3 months of the year are pretty lackluster, kind of filled with the kind of bum movies that just don't really do much of anything for me. But aside from like some Oscar movies that get released, usually, yeah, the first few months of the year are kind of just whatever. But this year, oddly enough, there have been a decent handful of movies that I want to talk about. So I guess I'll be doing that. Again, this is not scripted, so there are going to be parts where I may trail off or I may ramble a little bit. I definitely will not be focused, so don't come into this expecting a focused review. I'm just going to be jumping around using my notes here and there because I use notes for these videos instead of a script, so yeah. Okay, before we start, it's me editing the video. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, the trailer for Occupied City is very short, so the footage is gonna be very repetitive. Sorry about that in advance. That's all I got. Okay, Occupied City is the newest film from Steve McQueen, my favorite living director at the moment. He hasn't made a lot of movies. He's made a good handful, though, and I've seen them all at this point, obviously, because this newest one. I love pretty much everything he has to offer. There isn't a single one of his movies that I wouldn't put somewhere on my favorites of their respective year lists. Shame is a masterpiece about addiction and my favorite film from him. 10 out of 10 for that movie. 12 Years a Slave and Hunger are also fantastic character films in their own right. 9 out of 10 for those. Easy 9 out of 10 for those. Maybe, honestly, a 10 for both of those at some point in my life. Those movies are incredible. Widows is definitely his most recommendable film and his least complex, but still manages to be better than most recent entries in the heist movie genre. I mean, when I really think about it, there aren't really many movies that come close to it. Maybe Hell or High Water, but that's a much different movie. Widows is a lot more, a lot different. They're just different in a few ways that makes it hard to compare. A very exhilarating film, 8 out of 10 for that one. And in 2020, he released the Small Axe series, which is full of really well-made movies. Mangrove and Lover's Rock are probably the best of them from what I remember. I've only seen them once. I haven't gone back since they released in 2020, so maybe I'll have to rewatch. Decent 8 and strong 7 for those, respectively. And pretty much good, strong, decent, strong 7s for the rest of the movies in that series. Usually I wouldn't go on this tirade or mini tirade about a director because, usually I just want to talk about the movie, but with this guy, I want to preface that Occupied City is going to be a little bit hard to sell because if you're not already interested in Steve McQueen's filmography, you're probably not. It's going to be hard to recommend this one, but I'll do my absolute best. But I'm not going to lie about anything. I'm not going to lie about what the film is or isn't because I want to sell it. I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm here to just give my general opinion. So Occupied City is a documentary, the first and so far only documentary from him. I hope he makes more if he kind of goes down this more cerebral route that he took with this movie. It is a long movie, very long, over 4 hours long, and comprised mostly of stationary shots in and around the city of Amsterdam. Now, that alone sounds pretty boring. I can definitely understand why someone would be immediately turned off by that description, but that's why I'm here. I'm here to simply just give you my thoughts on why I personally love this movie, because surprise, surprise, I thought this movie was pretty fantastic and easily one of my favorite movies of the year so far. Loved it. First of all, it is a incredibly well shot film. This movie has some of the best cinematography I've seen in probably the last 5 years. There are some incredibly framed shots, Also, incredible lighting. Like the lighting, I just remember a lot of shots, the way they shot in the mornings. There were just these particular shots of the sunrise and sunset that just looked absolutely spellbinding. There were shots in the early morning using the fog that I particularly remember. There was a shot overlooking a lake that also just I immediately just sticks out in my head. And that's something I usually take into account, because the thing with this kind of documentary, or this kind of movie in general, is that, you know, obviously it being well shot is not the only thing that makes it great. And if that were the only thing going for it, I honestly wouldn't love it that much. But the fact that I can literally recall very specific shots from this film in this gargantuan 4-hour movie, that means something to me. And if I can remember that, then that means that there's definitely more to it than just it being well shot. Because, you know, a movie can be it can be the most beautifully shot movie ever made, but if that's all it's going for, if that's all it's got going for it, then I can't say that it's going to be lasting long in my memory, because I would much rather take a less well shot film but with better writing and better story than a perfectly shot film with kind of weaker elements on that side. But here's the thing, this movie's a documentary, so it has to survive on other elements. So what is it about? This documentary is basically just addresses being listed off and why they are significant to Jewish people that were persecuted in World War II, and Dutch citizens who aided other Dutch Jewish citizens, and even some people who betrayed their fellow Dutch and Dutch Jewish citizens. It's basically just locations that, you know, nowadays may not be very significant, and despite being incredibly well shot, don't really, you know, stick out all that much. But in World War II, these were very important, or, you know, better known locations than they are today. And basically, Steve McQueen went around Amsterdam shooting all these locations that come from this book that I can't remember off the top of my head. Atlas of an Occupied City? Atlas. Is it Atlas? I don't know. I'm not going to look it up right now because I don't have a computer near me. I'm just recording in my room right now. Anyway, this book was actually written by his wife. So there's a lot more personal stake in this movie than I expected. You know, when I first heard about this movie, I figured he was just making a documentary about his home city because he lives here. This is where he lives and where he works from. I figured it was just going to be him just, you know, showing a love letter to his city. But this movie really isn't a love letter to his city. A lot of the locations have very disturbing and dark backstories. Like, there are some stories here that I just remember quite vividly being just hard to listen to, and definitely will not be the best day brightener, I will say, given that, you know, they hold significance to Jewish people in World War II and the Holocaust, and, you know, oppressed people that not only are Jewish but also just Dutch and Dutch Jewish. Yeah, definitely not an upper, but again, I didn't find this movie outright depressing. In fact, there were quite a few stories that were very eye-opening and, you know, some kind of hope-inducing. It's hard to explain, but this movie really does a great job at kind of splitting the stories in a way where I'm never outright depressed for too long. And not that I was ever outright depressed, I just mean in the context of the movie. There are depressing stories. The movie opens up with kind of a sad one, but it does a good job at just splitting its stories up without being just too dark and drab for too long. But again, this is all helped by the visuals. I think the cinematography really helped make these stories easier to listen to. If I didn't have something as interesting to look at while I was hearing some of these stories, I definitely would not have been able to retain as much information. And trust me, I'm not implying that I retained everything. There are definitely some parts I forgot about. I will definitely have to see this movie again, but again, it left that kind of impact on me, and that is something that a lot of movies just fail to do. Not at all a flex. Anyway, the narration regarding the addresses and their significance is also, it stands out in a way that I didn't expect it to. You know, on the surface, it's not really all that eloquent. It's not like the most crazily, interestingly well-written narration of all time. It's not like she's using iambic pentameter or anything like that, but there's like a genuine sense of actual education and wonder. There is a real sense that the narrator is kind of going on this journey alongside you, and that's apparently something that Steve McQueen regarded as kind of purposeful. He himself said in an interview that it very much is the narrator's journey as well as the viewer's journey. So kind of being able to relate to the narrator and how she was reading the narration and how I was taking in the narration, it added a level of personal experience for me, which is something that a lot of documentaries like this can't or don't do. There's always a subtle hint of genuine emotion, which I feel like a lot of narration in documentaries similar to this really don't have. Props to Melanie Hyams for delivering this dialogue in a simultaneously monotone but engaging way. Melanie Hyams, fantastic. She pronounced everything in a very straight to the point way. There was definitely effort in that regard. I feel like some narration in some documentaries like this, when they pronounce certain things in different languages, it kind of comes across as a little lazy or not well thought out. Not here. No, there was detail. There was definitely detail, definitely consistency. Especially, I don't think Melanie Hyams is Dutch or Austrian or German. So, I think she's British. So the fact that she was able to pronounce all this stuff in what sounded like very correct vernacular, that's impressive. That's something I don't see very often. Oh, the music. The music in this movie was actually massively surprising. I did not expect this movie to have music that, A, was not very much used. That is not the right grammar. Wow. Jesus Christ, my grandmother's rolling in her grave. Jesus Christ. This movie does not contain the most music. There isn't, music in every single scene. In fact, I would say for the 4 hours that's in this film is, I would probably say that music is used for about 45 minutes overall. Maybe not even that. Like, aside from a couple of sequences, there isn't really music that stays any longer than maybe 3 minutes, and there aren't many sequences like that. There is one sequence with a drone that goes around the streets of Amsterdam at night that I remember. My God, that not only was that scene also just incredibly well shot, but the music was just so memorable. There was a weird piece that sounded like a harmonica trying to mimic playing two violins playing at once. I didn't even think that was fucking possible, but I guess here we are. And it also had a soundtrack. There was also a soundtrack. There were licensed songs used every here and there. Not really anything that particularly stood out. There was one track that I really loved the use of. It was Vladek Spielman's Nocturne in C minor? Is that what it is? Editor Xander again, it's C sharp minor. I'm fucking tired. The way that piano track is used in this documentary, very well done, really stuck out to me, very purposeful, loved it. Yeah, just so many purposeful choices in this movie that make the 4-hour runtime pass by much easier than I would have expected. Like, he's my favorite living director, but even when I look at a 4-hour runtime, I'm thinking to myself, okay, how are you gonna make this like really worth the time, because I value my time when it comes to movies. I don't like it when a movie fucking jerks me around. I really don't like it. It really gets to me when a movie doesn't feel like it values my fucking time. But this 4-hour movie that's slower than most movies I've seen in the last 5 years felt more respectful of my time than 80-minute movies that I've seen recently. So, yeah, again, really purposeful choices that I connected with throughout the entire movie. I will definitely be seeing this again. I do not expect it to connect with everybody as much as it connects with me. This is definitely something that I just hold personally very close. It's my second favorite year. Fuck, man, I gotta stop. Oh, fuck. My second favorite movie of the year. I will definitely be seeing it again. It didn't even really feel like 4 hours. I did it in 2 sittings because I have a job that I have to do. So I ended up splitting it into 2 viewings. But yeah, that the 2 hours that I split it into did not feel like 2 hours. They felt like just barely an hour and a half each. That makes this seemingly 4-hour movie feel like less than 3 hours, which is just fucking insane to me. It never felt dull, never felt too repetitive in a way that felt annoying. It was just consistently engaging. I loved it from start to finish. And I'm giving this one a strong 8 to a light 9. Might give it a 9 someday. I rated it an 8 on Letterboxd because that's just the rating that felt most right to me. I feel like a 9 would be jumping the gun just a tiny bit. But I don't know, maybe someday. This really did connect with me. I connected with it more than Widows and pretty much all the Small Axe movies. Definitely not as good as his 3 aforementioned narrative films. Check those out. Those are amazing, but tread lightly. They can be kind of brutal and hard to watch. But I love Steve McQueen. I love his vision. I love the way he makes his movies. And I feel like he just doesn't get enough attention. He deserves more, he really does deserve more. In a world where Barry Jenkins is directing the fucking Mufasa movie, why don't we have Steve McQueen directing bigger movies? Not saying that he should go to Disney. Please don't do that. Please don't direct for Disney or Marvel, please. Steve, don't. He's not gonna watch this video. But I'd like to see him handle bigger budgets. I'd like to see him handle more. I'd like to see what he can do with, just bigger ideas, because I know that he's capable of creating something absolutely fantastic. And there's a reason he's my current favorite living director. So yeah, Occupied City, like I said, strong 8 to a light 9. 8 out of 10. Strong 8. Love it. Love it, love it, love it.